You are very young, no? How old are you?
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. I'm 27, going on
27.
28. Yeah.
And you studied computer science, or you just started, you did school and you started programming right away?
I've been programming technically since I was 5 years old.
Wow.
So, yeah. So it was long before university. But yeah, no.
How can,
I actually
how,
finished.
how
Sorry.
can a 5-year-old child program? I mean, how did that happen?
I think it's just the right amount of autism or something. I'm not sure. But my dad, he had one of those old computers, CRTs back when it was Windows 90, 98. Um, and then, yeah, I don't know. He gave it to me as like, hand me down. And yeah, I don't know. It's this kind of love for programming kind of started from there. Um, it was very basic. Don't think I was, don't imagine I was creating anything crazy. But yeah, it was a passion that then turned into a career. So that was lucky. I got lucky with that.
And when did you decide to become an AI specialist and not a hacker?
Great question. Because I was actually both for a while. Believe it or not, I was actually on track to work for GCHQ, the British Intelligence Services for
Wow.
cybersecurity.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and I always just kept putting it off. First, I was going to go through like their junior program, like the 16-year-old apprenticeship. That was going to go through their like higher apprenticeship at 18. And then I was like, because I was talking to people and they were like, if you just wait a little bit more, if you get a degree first, you're immediately going to start at a higher rank inside the organization. So I was like, okay, I'll go and do a computer science degree. I already know everything. It was not that difficult, but might as well. And then after the computer science degree, what happened is between my second and third year, I went and I worked in industry for 1 year. I went to work at actually Aldi. I'm sure you're
Yeah,
familiar.
I saw that on your
Yeah,
LinkedIn profile.
yeah,
God,
yeah. I worked for the I worked for the head office in Atherstone here in the UK, managing UK and Ireland. But I actually did also do a bit of foreign experience in Germany, actually, for Aldi North over there. So that was fun. But that was when I realized that I was losing I was losing my passion for computers and programming because I wasn't working on things that actually interested me. Don't get me wrong, like supply chains are very important. I really appreciate now the logistics that goes into stocking our groceries and supermarkets. But you can imagine if you're 20 years old, maybe uh point of sale transactions for fruits is not the most exciting thing you want to be working on. So that was when
and
I realized, like, okay, my initial plan of becoming a software engineer wasn't going to work out. It was just not, I wasn't working on things that I actually wanted to do. So this is where I was about to join again, cybersecurity field. And then before I did that, I realized I'm very young and I always I enjoyed autonomy. I enjoy like building something for myself, working on the interesting projects I actually wanted to work on. And that's when I thought to myself, if I'm going to risk everything, like have a company fail, it's probably better to do it now when I'm young than later in life when I have to take care of responsibilities and such. So that's how I instead of going into the intelligence services, I went into I did a master's degree. And during the master's degree, I started like the first company. So my bachelor's thesis was in machine learning, my master's thesis was in machine learning, and my PhD was in machine learning. So it's yeah, it's where I've kind of made my career. It's my field of expertise. Um, but that's how it kind of started. And then luckily, fortunately, it worked out. Back then, I feel like if we look back at it now, a lot of things were by accident. and then later on you reflect and you realize like, oh, I just got lucky the first time round. But then you take those lessons, you learn from them, and the next time, you actually do the same things, but this time intentionally with purpose. So yeah, I've been very fortunate in that sense. I mean, we're actually a social enterprise because I can tell you this. This is a story effectively. Um, last August in 2024, over a year ago, I found myself in a position where I had just sold the majority of my stake in my previous company, and basically I was in this very fortunate position at a very young age, um, 20, 25, 26, where I could actually now I had the financial freedom to actually work for the rest of my life on things I actually wanted to work on. That's a very lucky position to be in, especially because I don't come from a particularly affluent background. Um, so I left the previous company because I didn't agree with the direction it was taking, um, just like from an ethical and moral standpoint. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna go and work on my own thing. And so when I left, I was facing this conundrum of like, what do you do next, right? And particularly for me, I wanted to work on something more long term. The previous projects were always about, okay, let's build something, let's sell it to as many people as we can, and then, move on to the next project, building up our resources along the way. But at this point, I was in a position where I had the resources, so I could retire, I could, enjoy the fruits of my labor and enjoy life while I'm young. But instead, what I chose to do is look at the world and see if there's anywhere where I could have a net positive social impact, right? Um, Something long term, something where I didn't have to worry about appeasing shareholders, or I didn't have to worry about having to put food on the table necessarily. And with my expertise being in machine learning, which then became very relevant when the AI trend cycle started, um, I realized that this was probably another space where, yeah, both previous companies involved machine learning, and so does this one as well. But this was, I think, a place where I could do some real good. And so I started as a thought exercise, a research and development project. I tried to see where was the world headed, right? Like what trajectory were we heading down as these technologies were emerging? And one particular area that caught my interest was before it was even called agentic AI, it was that idea that, the promise people were made about why they should let this technology into their lives. It was, make your life easier, and you can offload the work you don't want to do. And yet, even today, you only start to see that happen now in very, unmeaningful ways, in my opinion. So what I realized is, unfortunately, what I think has played out, and I think your background as an economist actually looks also through your portfolio and your work. So
Mm.
I think you're going to be very knowledgeable about all of this I'm about to share. But
No,
I
I
spoke,
see. I talk to you, and I just had to write about Elon Musk and about the floating of SpaceX yesterday, and uh, and I think about how he changed throughout his career, his ethics,
yeah,
and a lot has to do, I guess, with the fortune he made, but also the possibilities he saw that he's the master of technology. How you are going to protect yourself to go a similar way, and because you're talking about social ethics and that you want to
yeah,
follow, and you quitted the company because they didn't share your values. Are you not afraid of getting overrun by technology as well, like all these other tech guys in Silicon Valley? Nearly all of them, Peter Thiel, they all, from my point of view, they crazy. They're dangerous.
yeah. This is we do a lot of work globally with a lot of organizations on this point, and what we call it is we're sneaking in social impact through the back door, corporate social responsibility through the back door. When we go to companies and we ultimately, so yeah, very quickly, I should give you a background on this. What does the social product enterprise actually stand for? What we're afraid of is that a lot of people are going to be laid off. They're not going to be part of the workforce for the next generation. Because as you know, I think as you can imagine, in 5 to 10 years, to be a competitive member of the workforce, you need to be enhanced or augmented by these technologies. And the reality is, and this is a global problem. I've spent the last 3 months speaking with people around the world, from academia to private to government. Um, the fact is, a lot of people are not ready. A lot of people, believe it or not, um, are actively refusing to learn these technologies because they're afraid. I'll give you an example. We are working with the UK Council in London on basically we were recommended as the number one agentic solution for them because what happened is in urban planning in the UK there are not enough planning officers. These are people who review your plans that you submit. Um, and yet, despite the fact that these people have about as much job security as you could hope for, there's a massive supply problem. They're still afraid because of the media and the perpetuation of this idea of you're going to be automated and replaced. And so inside the UK Council, and this might be the same thing in Germany, I'm not 100% sure, but inside the UK Council, people are refusing to even use like ChatGPT, the very basics of things that could easily offload some of their workload because they don't want to even potentially face the idea. So it's a very interesting kind of thing about human nature that I think is causing, yeah, I think it's all headed to the biggest global displacement event that's going to, I'm not convinced, end up in a great socioeconomic, outcome. So this is kind of what the social impact is that we're really talking about. Um, we did, I looked at three things of how could we solve this. One, maybe I should start some kind of, non-profit where we go and we campaign and consult with companies saying, hey, look, you're not in a race with your competitors. You're not in a rush to adopt AI. You don't need to lay off 70% of your workforce, which they did, and then they had to bring them back. I mean, you've got careers like AI janitors, entire careers dedicated to cleaning up the mess that's happening with this rushed adoption. Well, reality is companies are value oriented, especially when we have partners in South America and Southeast Asia where human capital is still cheaper than AI. They do not care about the livelihood or well-being of their staff. So, it doesn't matter. They're not going to listen to us, no matter how much you campaign or protest. It's not going to be an effective change of this path that I think we're headed down. Um, Again, one of the biggest, I think, global displacement events that a lot of people I think are afraid of, but yet no one seems to be really doing anything proactively to pitch, well, and that's what we're really doing, pitch an alternate vision of the future where people don't need to be afraid of being laid off because it's being managed properly. Workbeaver is a project that's like
The, yeah, the
a
problem is
part of it.
the money thing. I mean, it's going to finish very soon, so we have to come to an end. But the problem is the money thing that I think people get with the stocks of Nvidia and all this. I mean, AI,
Yeah,
OpenAI, that's probably going to float. Then Starlink and all this stuff that people dreaming about becoming the next Elon Musk, and that's probably the biggest danger. No, if I'm not against AI, I just don't see right now how it could make me happier. I mean, but I
that
see
that's
the use of it.
that's that's a real problem. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly why we have so much support coming in early because yeah, people were promised like this should make your life easier. And even today, you're looking at, yeah, as you said yourself, you don't see how, right? So that's why we don't start with a question like, what do you want to automate? We ask you something like this. What was the most stressful thing you did today? Right? And then you start thinking through the day, oh, this is what I did today. And man, I wish I could have someone else do this. That's what AI should be. That's what AI should be about. It shouldn't be about generating images or creativity being taken away.
Yeah, yeah,
The things they actually want to do, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And that's why what we're
yeah.
doing is we're going to the world and we're saying to the world, hey, I think you guys are adopting it irresponsibly. Here, let me try to convince you. Let me show you there's another way. Yes, we have to appeal to the greed of people. You're absolutely right. And the way we appeal to the greed of people is we go to businesses and we say, look, we can give you all the benefits that you're looking for anyway, but we can do it in a way where you don't have to lay off your workforce. Corporate social responsibility. You can be, and again, you know, you can be a force for good while still retain the benefits, meeting your shareholder requirements, your quarterly targets, etc. So um, I think there's a way to do this where it doesn't have to be a win-lose, where people can benefit the most. But yes, I think a lot of your concerns are warranted, and I would agree with a lot of them that
Let's talk again. I think we have in a couple of months we have to talk again. I think it's very interesting because you are the generation that is going to live that. There's so many
we better try
things.
and build something good for ourselves then, shouldn't we? Right? But that's
Yeah,
the
and
part
then
most
for
people
instance,
miss.
and with simulations, I think AI is great in medicine, in hospitals, with the climate change to predict weather, whatever. AI is great. In administration, I think as well. But like you said, why should AI paint a painting?